Hi, my name is Tim Butler and I'm with Open for Business, and this is our Mevo Start Review. Now, if you've not heard of a Mevo before and you're wondering what is a Mevo, it's a series of live streaming cameras designed to be able to live stream to popular streaming services, or even several of them, using simply the camera and a phone or a tablet that you happen to have at your disposal. This is dramatically different than how we normally live stream, where someone may, if they want to be just an amateur streaming to their personal Facebook page, say they might just use their phone and point it at something or point it at themselves and broadcast. Or on the other hand, you go to the really professional setups, whether it's big organizations or the popular YouTubers or that sort of thing, where they'll have sophisticated camera setups going into computers and all kinds of software to manage it. The Mevo falls somewhere in the middle, where you don't have to hook up a bunch of things. In fact, this camera by itself, and again with a tablet or phone, can do all that you need to do to transmit video, but it gives you a higher quality setup. You can put it on a tripod easily, you can manage it without being on top of it, all those things that you'd think of a more dedicated setup doing. So it allows you to step up from just using a phone. Now, the Mevo Start is a single camera traditional setup. It's very much like a 1080p video camera. It can record video. That's actually what I'm doing right now. We're not live streaming. But I could hit the go live button and we'd be streaming live. So in that regard, it's like your digital camera, video camera that can do that sort of thing. The original Mevos were a little different. They had a 4K sensor, and then they split that 4K picture into multiple segments, creating the illusion of a multicam setup. So you could be just like a very sophisticated broadcaster that has different camera angles during the broadcast to, say, show what you're doing from a different vantage point, focus in on a different part of the scene, focus in on a second presenter, etc. The Mevo Start does abandon that, but it has a different trick up its sleeve. As you can see here, I'm now talking to you on a second Mevo Start. And basically what Mevo did here is, instead of trying to get all that into a single camera, they've moved towards a more traditional setup where you use multiple cameras to achieve it. But still using that Mevo formula, it's all done wirelessly. If you look at my tablet here, you can see I have a video switcher on here, and I can see a live preview of what the different Mevos are seeing, and I can just tap one and return, for example, back to right where I started, all using the tablet. So you get the more advanced setup like you'd have with a professional multicam setup that you normally have a computer pulling all that video footage into, or an actual dedicated video switcher. Doing all that with a camera that's wireless, can run on battery, and the tablet or phone you probably already have. The original Mevo was really neat in that it simulated that with a single camera, but you hit limitations on that. The camera is still in one particular spot. If someone walks in front of it, for example, it doesn't matter how many cameras it's trying to pretend to be, it's still blocked. This one, we actually have a couple of different cameras. The standard pack, if you decide to get a multi-pack of Mevo Starts, is a 3-pack. Allows you to situate 3 cameras in different parts of your scene, whether you're just an individual broadcaster, maybe you're doing a cooking show. That's one of the demonstrations they recommend considering a use case for the Mevo for, where you want to focus on what you're preparing on with the one camera and yourself with the other. For myself, I lead a ministry, and having a multicam setup is great because you can have one focused on, say, the pulpit and another on musicians or the congregation, things like that. Lots of different options that you can do with a setup like this. And the multicam tool can even do nifty things like follow the action and notice where someone is and switch cameras to the ideal camera. So a little different from the original Mevo, but probably overall a better setup. And also, by dropping the higher resolution and going back down to what you're actually broadcasting at, it allows a bigger, better sensor for each pixel, making low light performance better. And for most of us that are going to probably use this at least sometimes indoors, that's really important, because your average room light, like I'm using right now, I'm in a kitchen, is quote unquote low light. So it's really great in that regard. And the possibilities are endless. Family get-togethers, maybe you have a wedding coming up, you'd like to be able to live stream that. all kinds of different things you can do. Coming up at Christmas, maybe you have family members who, for safety reasons, can't travel, or just the normal difficulties of getting a schedule together. You could put cameras throughout a family gathering with those that were physically gathered and allow the others to feel a part of it. Lots of neat opportunities there. So how does this work? Well, again, right now I'm using a very simple setup. As you can see, I'll zoom out and show you the overall scene. I have the 2 Mevos and an inexpensive battery-operated light. Just to add some additional lighting, I have a single bulb overhead that's illuminating me and doing most of the work. If I turn off this light, the stage light, you'll see it still looks pretty good. A little on the darker side, but still really quite acceptable. The extra little light here is mostly to fill in, to make it not look quite as ominous as overhead lighting does. If your lighting is mostly, say, lamps more at face level, you don't even need any special lighting. You're purely using the Mevos. So that means that this setup is really pretty nifty for as little as $399 MSRP for a single camera. And a lot of times it's on sale, so you can go even lower than that. Now, you may have noticed I'm actually doing a 3-camera setup here. The 1 camera looks a little different though, and that's because I'm actually using my original personal Mevo to show you the other 2 Mevos here. They do have wires coming from them because I'm charging them at the moment. They don't require those though, you can disconnect them. But I'm showing you the original setup, and I'm doing that also to mention something I love about the Mevo system, which is that the company has been really, really good about going back and offering upgrades to its original cameras. So I have this camera, it's 5 years old now. It didn't support MultiCam with multiple Mevos. It wasn't even offered with the idea that the Mevo Start would exist, as far as I know, at the time that it was first offered. And yet, here it is, able to integrate into the MultiCam setup as part of what we're doing here. So that's pretty impressive, and it gives me a lot of confidence in recommending the Mevo Start, because Mevo has shown a consistent record of upgrading its older devices, even a first-generation Mevo that hasn't been sold in years, as it continues to produce new products. And so not all, but most of the features that are available in the Mevo Start also work on that older camera. Obviously, the Mevo Start has the newer sensor and a better battery, a much better battery. The first Mevo's battery life was a little anemic. This one seems so much better. But features like integrating it into MultiCam work perfectly well with the old Mevo being integrated into the new ones. And that gives me hope also as additional Mevos come out in the future. If you're starting to build a live streaming setup that will be more sophisticated, maybe you're giving this as a gift to someone who's trying to get started and you don't want them to immediately outgrow it, it seems very likely that Mevo will continue to allow you to build onto the system. It's a great thing. Now, there are a few things I really like about what Mevo's done in the last few years that make me feel all the more confident recommending it as well. And a big part of that, besides the fact they keep upgrading, is what the upgrades are they've added. For a long time, Mevo's app that I'm using to control it, which is so impressive, was the only way you could use the Mevo other than to pay $80 a month for Live Stream Studio. And once you get into spending $80 a month, it obviously becomes a very different value proposition than a camera and a free or cheap subscription plan to stream. Over the last couple of years, though, Mevo has done a few really nice things. First off, all the Mevos, even that first generation Mevo, have been enabled to be used as webcams like we use for video conferencing or Zoom or Microsoft Teams or what have you. So not only can this be used for live streaming, when you're not live streaming, you can use it as a likely better than your built-in webcam. Very few computers have good webcams, and even many add-on webcams are below average in video quality. The Mevo produces a very good picture, and you can use it as a webcam. Fantastic thing, especially if you're thinking, well, this would be great for family functions or my business, but I don't do a lot of live streaming and you're not sure it really makes sense. If you need a webcam too, suddenly it becomes all the more affordable. I really like that. But even more intriguing is something else that Mevo has done, which is that they have added NDI support for the Mevo Start. Unfortunately, that one wasn't backported to the older models, but is obviously a bigger step once you understand what it is. NDI is a wireless or wired networking protocol for sending video at a very fast rate, what's called low latency, so that you can use it but when you're integrating that video into other video sources and other sound sources for live streaming. So if, for example, you find that the limitations that I discussed in the article that do exist with the Mevo software are going to be something that you either are going to bump into right away, or you're going to bump into later on as you grow in your setup, or the person you're buying this for grows in his or her setup, you can then take the video, transmit it via NDI, and use it in any popular live streaming software such as OBS. Suddenly, if you do want that more sophisticated setup, the Mevo isn't something you outgrow, but something that you incorporate into that setup. And NDI is a fantastic way to do that. My ministry uses NDI, for example, to display slides and song lyrics and so on in OBS. And now you can integrate this camera, use it wirelessly with this battery pack, put it, say, on a piano if you're trying to capture someone singing, put it somewhere that's going to capture the whole family at a gathering and have it out of the way without having to figure out how to get wires to it. All those sorts of things become possible, and it'll go right into your streaming software and go in fast enough that as you, for example, use a different microphone or whatever you might want to do, it's all going to integrate without a lot of noticeable lag. So it makes it very, very flexible. These cameras are limited to some extent. They're $400 cameras, a little cheaper, and they do a whole bunch. They have all these features I've been talking about. So obviously, if you're comparing it to a high-end mirrorless camera or DSLR or professional style broadcasting equipment, it's going to have some limitations. It doesn't, for example, have the nice shallow depth of field that blurs everything out in the background, that sort of thing. But for most purposes, it's really good. And consider this, because it doesn't have the setup required every time you set it up. If you want to go on location, you want to go outside someplace and just use your cell phone as a hotspot for it, you can broadcast virtually anything over live streaming, and all you need is the Mevo and your phone or your tablet. So really, really impressive. And I think for a great deal of people, it's going to be an ideal setup, or at least a great way to get into live streaming. And then with these added features like the webcam mode and NDI, it's going to be something that you can use for years to come as part of a broader setup if you want to. So as you can tell, I'm pretty excited about this. I thank Logitech for sending these 2 units that we could try. And I'm really excited that it's actually working with the unit that I personally own. It's such a neat setup. I think you'll enjoy it. I think especially for the price, it's hard to beat. And so if you're looking to get into live streaming, add some sophisticated NDI-based protocol video into an existing live stream, you're looking to give a neat gift that's unusual and helpful to someone who wants to be in live streaming, any of those things this Christmas, this is a really good choice, and I think you'll like it. Check out my article for more details, and of course, please do follow us both on our YouTube channel and at ofb.biz for more reviews and content throughout the week. Have a Merry Christmas, and I'll see you again soon.